XRP obviously is my largest holding. It represents about actually 50% of my entire portfolio. I've been stacking that about 5 years. And I have that short-term and long-term vision for XRP. In a couple of years, I want to dump a lot of it, but I want to keep some of that for the next 5 or 10 years because I see the potential with remittance payments and moving money around the world in under 5 seconds for a fraction of a penny. And from a technical standpoint, XRP could definitely be worth $100 to $1,000, honestly, in the next 10 years, just depending on obviously how cycles mature. We can't exactly put our finger on timing, but if we look at what Bitcoin's done, what Ethereum's done, how they respect those Fibonacci extensions over time, I think that's entirely possible.
One sip of a morning coffee could have cost a single XRP, except that by today's valuation, that token would be worth $1,000. It sounds like science fiction. By the end of this discussion, next year's breakfast might appear as a 5-figure expense. Imagine standing in line at a cafe that labels a small cup tiny while charging more than a typical monthly phone bill. During the wait, a crypto feed can resemble a boxing match. In one corner, enthusiasts chanting XRP to $1,000. In the other, skeptics advising dollar-cost averaging into index funds. Scrolling through alternating waves of hype and criticism prompts a key question. Under what conditions could XRP's market capitalization truly skyrocket? The following analysis will evaluate those possibilities, test extreme scenarios, and examine regulatory factors to determine whether XRP could indeed propel its market cap into orbit.
Quick XRP reminder. If you were to go on an exchange like Coinbase or Uphold and purchase $1,000 worth of XRP at a price of 51 cents a token, you'd receive right at 1,960 XRP. It's not financial advice, but to do some quick math, once XRP reaches its previous all-time high of $3.84, your 1,961 XRP would be worth about $7,530. With all the new things like RLUSD, the XLR network integration, and a ton of XRP ledger amendments going live, I believe that things are definitely moving in a direction to see some price appreciation backed by real utility. How high do you think XRP can go?
Currently, XRP trades at about $2.20. With 58.4 billion tokens circulating, multiply $2.20 by 58.4 billion, and you get roughly $127 billion. That's like the GDP of Ukraine or a bleary-eyed Greece nursing a hangover. Compared to Apple's $3 trillion or Bitcoin's $1.8 trillion, XRP is still a mid-size yacht next to the ocean liners of global finance. Now, imagine cranking XRP's price dial up to a clean $1,000. Multiply $1,000 by 58.4 billion coins, and you land on $58.4 trillion. That number makes my calculator wheeze, bigger than gold's entire market cap of about $22 trillion. Bigger than Apple plus Bitcoin combined, and more than almost everything people buy, sell, or brag about at dinner parties. On the surface, a 49,900% price jump sounds absurd. But remember, impossible in tech has a funny way of turning into an ordinary Tuesday. Before you roll your eyes so hard you sprain something, let's dive into the edge cases. Because if there's one thing crypto folks love, it's playing with bold assumptions.
If you're going to hold it for that long, yeah. I think that you could see easily 5 digits on XRP in that time frame, $10,000 plus. When XRP and Codius are moving and settling the derivatives market, yeah, $10,000 to $50,000 XRP. And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's going to be overnight. They're going to flip a switch," and just don't listen to those people. There are actual things that need to happen, real-world events that need to play out for those type of numbers to exist. But they can exist. The math is there. But it is predicated on certain things happening.
XRP's big calling card is moving value across the planet in 2 to 3 seconds for a fraction of a penny. Let's take an example. Suppose last month, a buddy owed you $50 for a shared hotel bill. Your bank wanted $45 in fees and 3 business days to settle. Instead, you switched to a non-custodial wallet, zipped him the XRP equivalent, and when you refreshed, the balance was already there. His reply, the wide-eyed emoji, brains exploding. That speed and cost advantage becomes even more relevant when you consider that global remittances hit $800 billion in 2024. Banks bleed billions in intermediary fees every year. Imagine traditional rails as a traffic-clogged highway and XRP as a maglev train swooping overhead for half a cent. If enough passengers board that train, price pressure does what price pressure does best. It pushes numbers upward. Enter the monster addressable market known as SWIFT, the messaging network banks use to say, "Send Carla's money to Canada and don't lose track." SWIFT moves about $5 trillion every day. If XRP captures 10%, that's $500 billion in daily settlements. Even a 1% slice would mean $50 billion dancing across ledgers in seconds.
So then we used a digital asset. We focused on XRP as this bridge currency, again, not trying to replace fiat on either side, but just trying to make the movement of the capital move at the same time the message move.
You heard it right there, Mario. They're making the capital move at the same time as the information and the message that's corresponding to it. That's something that Swift is incapable of doing with their current technology. And whether they decide to use Chainlink, whether they tap into Ripple, whether they're developing a private currency behind the scenes that we are unable to actually discuss here, it's clear that that system that's currently operating is not only outdated, it's on its way out.
Now let's layer in RippleNet, the network of over 350 financial institutions already piloting or integrating XRP for cross-border liquidity. From Santander to MoneyGram pilots, Ripple's clients have reported up to a 40% reduction in funding costs on certain corridors. If more banks convert pilots into live flows, adoption scales, and volume generates price momentum. But now comes the awkward elephant: supply. Bitcoin flaunts scarcity like a luxury handbag, only 21 million ever. XRP started with 100 billion, though 41.6 billion sits locked in escrow. Another billion is scheduled to drip out each month. That's like topping up a punch bowl at an already tipsy party. Still, Ripple's escrow isn't a dilution time bomb. The company routinely relocks unused drops if demand feels short, like a bartender who only refills your glass when you're thirsty. That moderates the supply surge, though it doesn't erase the fact that tokens exist.
So first is the transaction speed. It settles in 3 to 4 seconds, no matter how large the value is. It processes up to 1,500 transactions per second. Third, cost efficiency. Very low transaction fees, about fractions of a penny. Fourth, trust and partnerships. It's not always the best tech. It's the relationships. For example, look at the Ethereum Alliance, okay? ETH, it was because of trust and relationships, regardless how corrupt it was, okay? So at the end of the day, it's a big club. Lastly is versatility from this standpoint. It can facilitate instant currency conversion without intermediaries. And what that would ultimately do is, because you don't need all these Nostro Vostro, which are pre-funded accounts holding trillions of dollars, they don't need to be there anymore because you don't need all these middlemen and intermediaries. All that money can go back into the economy, into different sectors of the economy, and all that capital will be offloaded, and it wouldn't have to just sit doing nothing in pre-funded accounts. Those advantages make XRP extremely attractive.
Next up, regulation. In the US, XRP is still shaking off bruises from its SEC slugfest. But 2025's ruling cleared up some clarity. XRP traded on secondary markets isn't a security. Overseas reception has been warmer. Dubai's Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority welcomed Ripple into its sandbox. Singapore granted a major payment institution license, and European banks are eyeing on-demand liquidity pilots. You don't usher in a multi-trillion-dollar asset class without every regulator on Earth wanting to poke around, test drive it, and maybe even invite it to lunch. Global compliance teams move slower than glaciers on melatonin, but once they sign off, the utility can unlock faster than expected. Then there's competition. Stellar wants the same cross-border pie. JP Morgan has its own JPM coin shuttling funds behind closed doors. Visa is experimenting with tokenized US dollars. Every instant pay protocol wants a slice of revenue that banks currently pocket.
All right, folks, Monday morning and a big bounce for XRP after retracing to $2.65 this morning. The XRP family showing up and eating up that dip, already pushing XRP back up towards $3. Now, we also got massive news from Ripple here today. They have secured 2 more money transmitter licenses in the great state of Texas and New York. So this brings their total to 55 MTLs. And if you look, they also have regulatory clarity from the Monetary Authority of Singapore, over there in Dubai, Central Bank of Ireland, and they just continue to expand. Now, they also announced 7 additional partners here in the North American region. We're waiting for the first banks and institutions here in the US to announce the Ripple partnerships. That we believe is coming soon. But Ripple reporting that their payments business has doubled in the past year. The strength on display for both Ripple and XRP.
For XRP to dominate, it needs the fastest train, the cheapest tickets, the cushiest seats, and the most convenient stations. Yet, optimism persists, fueled by the sheer scale of savings if it works. Early RippleNet adopters have cut liquidity costs by up to 70% on certain routes, numbers that incentivize CFOs to upgrade legacy systems. Bold price predictions keep the dream alive. One crypto executive forecasts $1,000 by 2035. Just 10 years, 1 World Cup, and half a mortgage away. A popular business YouTuber turned pundit says that if XRP nabs a sliver of Swift's daily throughput, 4-digit prices follow sooner than your grandchildren's inheritance. But not everyone's on board. Some analytics shops cap XRP around the mid-$200s even by 2050. Others draw a $1,000 line in the sand as late as 2040. So you can place your chips and let the market do the talking.
Let's just say XRP decides to, all of a sudden, they replace Swift. Let's say that happens. If XRP replaces Swift and FedNow, you know what happens? Let me give you some numbers here. XRP's ledger processes transactions in 3 to 5 seconds at nearly no cost, making it significantly faster and cheaper than Swift. So, Swift processes $5 trillion daily, or 1.25 quadrillion annually. If you didn't know what that was, quadrillion annually, Swift. If XRP captures 5 to 10% of volume, let's just say 10% of volume, $125 trillion annually. The demand for XRP, by the way, could be any of these other technologies we're talking about. Analysts estimate that a $10 trillion market cap could push XRP's price to $100 per token, with full replacement potentially driving it up to $1,000.
There's a switch that's going to be flipped when it comes to XRP. And you are going to see the major financial institutions globally use this technology.
Ready for a stress test? Knock supply down by 10% to account for lost wallets and couch cushion mishaps. That leaves about 52.5 billion coins. Assume Ripple locks another 5 billion for corporate treasuries and central bank pilots. 47.5 billion remain. Feels smaller, but still massive. Now shift global GDP from about $94 trillion in 2023 to a projected $150 trillion by 2035. If digital assets soak up 20% of that value, you've got a $30 trillion pie. If XRP commands half, that's $15 trillion backing 47.5 billion coins, around $315 each. Tighten supply more through token burns from transaction fees, sprinkle in speculative fervor, and the climb to 4-digit territory flickers into view. Still, numbers tell only half the story. Culture tells the rest. Money is religion. People trust dollars and euros because generations have done so. Convincing Aunt Linda to swap her greenbacks for a private company ledger that's theoretically decentralized, yet also kind of centralized? She'd better get some free cookies to consider it. Real adoption hinges on everyday convenience. Tapping a phone to pay for coffee, sending money overseas as easily as sharing a meme, and watching transactions clear before your latte cools.
The XRP escrow, and in that escrow there's like 46 billion, I think, at the minute, XRP. That escrow is released at 1 billion a month, but whatever they don't use that comes out of escrow, they lock back up, which is normally about 800 million a month. So they use 1 to 200 million a month. A lot of people think that this circulation, or the increased circulation and supply that comes into circulation, is something that keeps the XRP price down and suppresses it. However, if you actually take that out and use just basic maths, if you get 1 to 200 million XRP a month coming into the circulating supply, that over a year is between 1 and 2 billion XRP. Yeah. The circulating supply is currently 55 billion. 1 to 2 billion is like 2.5% to 5% of supply a year, which is nothing. Like ETH's inflated at like 6% every year until the London hard fork last year, and now sometimes it's deflationary, sometimes inflationary, depending on network activity. Yeah. And ETH still managed to do a 4.236 extension last cycle. Because the numbers seem bigger, people look at it and go, oh, look how much is coming into.
In the first quarter of 2024, XRPL on-chain transactions surged by 108%, surpassing 250 million operations, demonstrating robust growth even as the broader cryptocurrency market contracted. This acceleration reflects both institutional pilots and growing retail participation, positioning the ledger as a leading contender for scalable, high-throughput financial infrastructure. The rise of dynamic non-fungible tokens on the XRPL, enabled by the XLS20 standard, has transformed digital collectibles into mutable assets. During the first quarter of 2025, global NFT marketplaces processed roughly $30 billion in volume, with XRPL projects accounting for more than $600 million across innovative platforms. These developments, coupled with an integrated decentralized exchange and seamless auto-bridging, have spurred DeFi protocols that report channeling over $4 billion in token issuances and daily trading volumes exceeding $50 million. Sustainability remains a cornerstone of the XRPL's design. Each transaction consumes less than 0.008 kWh of energy, representing a minuscule fraction of the power required by legacy proof-of-work networks. This minimal energy footprint aligns with corporate ESG mandates and appeals to green-conscious investors seeking low-carbon blockchain solutions.
This XRP volume is great, but let's not forget that Brad Garlinghouse recently shared that once we have regulatory clarity finally in place, institutions that were previously on the sidelines are ready to jump in. Brad predicted that this momentum could drive cryptocurrency's market cap to $5 to $10 trillion here in 2024. This all amidst Ripple, while it's gearing up to roll out new upgrades to the XRPL. And these amendments will continue to boost liquidity, attract institutional investors, potentially channeling billions into the XRPL and the asset, especially for DeFi.
RippleNet's on-demand liquidity service has expanded into key Asian corridors, notably through partnerships in Japan with major remittance providers, enabling real-time settlements without the need for pre-funded accounts. More than 300 financial institutions, from prominent European banks to Southeast Asian remittance firms, are actively integrating XRPL-based liquidity tools, while digital community initiatives are using the ledger to issue tokenized loyalty rewards and branded NFTs. On a macroeconomic level, projections anticipate global gross domestic product to climb from $94 trillion in 2023 to $150 trillion by 2035. If digital assets capture even 20% of this expanded economy, and if XRPL secures half of that share, the ledger's capitalization could approach $15 trillion. Adjusting for token burns and strategic escrow reserves, this scenario suggests a per-token valuation that may surpass conventional market forecasts, edging into the hundreds of dollars and potentially beyond.
Does Ripple's on-demand liquidity, otherwise known as ODL, impact the price of XRP? Many people have been asking this question, many people confusing the facts. I'm going to give you the answer and keep this real with you guys. Ripple's on-demand liquidity product, the buying and selling that's happening almost simultaneously, is designed to be net neutral. In fact, they've even said this many times in their own words, and even in their Wells notice submission to the SEC, they specifically said that it is designed to be neutral, the impact on XRP's price. So they're basically buying and selling XRP instantaneously to facilitate the on-demand liquidity flows. But the reason why I actually believe that indirectly Ripple's on-demand liquidity does impact the price of XRP is because Ripple has to allocate a certain amount of XRP off to the side for on-demand liquidity. Is that 1 billion XRP, 5 billion XRP? We don't know. But that amount of XRP that is set off to the side does make XRP more scarce and
Imagine a world where central bank digital currencies plug into XRP's ledger for liquidity backing. In pilot programs, Caribbean central banks are exploring XRP as a settlement asset for regional payments. If sovereign treasuries squirrel away XRP, escrow unlocks shrink, tightening effective supply and fueling price momentum. Picture 2035. You tap a barista robot, pay with XRP from your biometric wallet, and settlement is final in under 2 seconds. I board a metro with fares tokenized on the fly. Your friend streams you micro royalties for an AI voice cameo in their ebook. Every hop, swap, and microtransaction hum along on rails powered by XRP's liquidity pools. Add the rise of machine-to-machine payments. Think IoT sensors paying each other micro fees for data in real time. Imagine autonomous vehicles topping off tolls via XRP, or smart contracts routing energy trades between microgrids. Those markets could shape trillion-dollar sectors where XRP acts as the native bridge currency. Now, what if NFT marketplaces adopt XRP for micro-tipping artists? If just one top 100 platform integrates XRP for artist royalties, that could introduce millions of daily active users to XRP's speed and low fees. Adoption begets adoption, and network effects snowball.
If you have XRP, you can escrow your own XRP. You can use the XRP toolkit, Google it, XRP toolkit, and you can register your wallet there, and you can pull it up, and you can do stuff with your XRP. And one of those things is you can escrow it, and you can time lock it. So if you wanted to protect the XRP from yourself or have it transferred to a different wallet on a specific date in the future, you can do that. That is a feature built into the XRPL, is the escrow.
Now imagine regulators wake up one morning, agree globally to ditch paper pushing and greenlight Ripple's rails. Correspondent banks, remittance shops, fintech apps, all push an update. Price charts leapfrog like popcorn. Liquidity begets liquidity. Retail FOMO lights TikTok ablaze, and anchors clutch coffee cups asking if you can buy crypto on your 401k. Of course, the dream could stall. A faster protocol might steal the spotlight. Global stablecoin standards could sideline bridge assets. A high-profile hack or exchange collapse could freeze public sentiment for years. Macro shocks, war, credit crises, pandemics could slam the brakes on experimental plumbing. Still, if innovation outpaces gridlock, the path to $1,000 XRP looks less like fantasy and more like a logical endpoint of financial evolution. It won't happen overnight, and price discovery will need breathers. But the longer you stare at those supply and demand curves, ledger upgrades, CBDC pilots, and cross-border use cases, the clearer it gets.
Payments is also kind of like a base use case for other types of financial services. Like if you think about security settlement, like it triggers a payment at the end of it. So we thought we should tackle this first, but we always did have our sights set on expanding into tackling other types of financial use cases. So capital markets is kind of like a logical place to expand.
So stocks and
bonds, bonds, exactly.
So what do you think? Could a single XRP pay your rent, your groceries, or maybe even your streaming subscription by 2035? Drop your prediction in the comments below. Hit that like button if this deep dive fueled your imagination, and subscribe for more mini docs on the financial revolution.